Right now I'm working on making sure I can get the frame level, and that's across the center 4 bolt holes. The front edge of that frame, that's where we're going to take the 16 inches out. And then we'll do a quick ground measurement, but it's not going to be accurate to the ground because we're making the truck level. I'm probably going to end up putting something up underneath the front to keep the truck from unloading or loading any which way when I drop this back end off. And the jack is dropped as far as it'll go. I think it's just enough to allow the weight of the bed of the frame to be equal when we slide it forward. So right now I got frame level across here, across here, across here, across there, across there, and then crisscross across here. That should be plenty. And now I'm just going to have to shorten that just a little bit less than 16 inches so it will slip in the hole by the time the frame is shortened up. Using the crane and a couple straps, a couple eyelet bolts, fender washers. Lifted it up and over, not a problem. You can take the tires off prematurely if you want it to go a little easier, or you don't want to lift this high. What I've done is set the frame up to where it's all level, meaning these 4 holes, which are on a different plane, and the front 2 and the back edges of the frame where we've already cut. And if those are all level, across the frame is level, this whole frame rail is level. And really what we're looking for is the top edge of this frame being level as well. That ends up being pretty simple actually. And this is the second time I've done this, so I've kind of averaged what I liked and didn't like about the last one. I chose to start right at the edge tangent to this back hull. You know, use your right angle and come straight across. So on this side, same thing, straight across. And you mark up and down the whole thing, and that's your start. So you start there. Now we've got a baseline to get the middle of this frame rail. You see how this kicks down? You use a either a pair of calipers, and scribe to get a start, get you close, or what ended up working for me perfectly was the 3rd dot on this Craftsman right angle. Because when you flip it over, it lines up with the same hole. So I got to ride my Sharpie right in that 3rd notch. So once you kind of know where you're going to be cutting, we're going to come 22 inches across this way, and then it lands almost in this divot. What that allows us to do is give us 6-inch Z. So 6 inches from here and 6 inches from here. That's where we get our total of 22 and our cut length of 16. So I roughed in most of my marks with silver Sharpie just to get me close, then came back and double checked everything and went in with a fine point. I actually really like this pen. It's called Dura Ink, made by Markall, and it has a really nice tip and allows you to get in real tight to the right angle there, and it marks really good on this nasty metal, even the stuff I haven't prepped. So I did go back and use a grinding wheel to prep all this area so I could have something smooth to write on, but this pen seems to do pretty good. So then I went in with my Sawzall, DeWalt Sawzall there, and go right over those black lines and just start your Sawzall, and it makes a nice straight line. You can work it over nice and slow. You can see it skipped out a couple times on me. I already bent that blade, but I did start with a new blade, and I was able to get all 4 of these cuts done with it, starting to go dull. So I also marked a about a 1-inch radius with a washer. So it looks like that washer is actually an 1.25 inches. A decent sized washer, and get it tangent on your Sharpie marks and come in there and make some fine point marks around the radius, inside and outside. Because what this is going to do is lap over top of our second piece there, and it really be tough to do this without this. I mean, if you're going to butt weld, you'd have to butt weld up through here, and you'd be cutting into this divot, which is not as cool. And a Z-weld, technically, you don't have to box or plate or anything, so if you feel comfortable with your weld, you can leave it alone. When these 2 pieces puzzle piece back together, that's enough weld to be considered a strong joint. So now that I've made my cuts on center with both of these, which averages to be a little bit larger than 16 inches, that's what the frontage of the bed is actually just over 16 inches. And actually, when you take your I had to cut my exhaust there, and I went ahead and pre-cut it up there for when it slides forward. These 2 e-brake cables have 16-inch extensions on them, or 16 1/8 is really what it comes out to. Anyways, when it comes time to cut this line, now we have exact center with our mark. And what we're going to do is come back and cut on this side of this line where you got your X's, and this side of this line. You want to make sure that that line ends up being really close to just on that side of the line, and vice versa over here. So that way when you go to put your frame up to this one, it also shows you whether you're tilted one way or the other, whether the frame's tilted down or up, and that allows you to get the frame rail lined up easier. Unhooked the brake line at the front and the back, took the clip out, and I already have that off the truck. Had the rear spring perches loose, made it easy to get the 9-inch out of there. A little bit of a bear on one of them. Left off yesterday with the 4 cuts on each side with the Sawzall. And I liked using the Sawzall so much because it leaves such a thin line. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut me a little entrance here with the cutoff wheel, and then go in with the Sawzall and do the rest, because I have way more control with the Sawzall than I do with the cutoff wheel. This takes too much more metal, and I hate using the 4.5-inch cutoff wheel. Okay, before I cut the vertical lines here, I went ahead and drilled some holes to make the radius to stay tight to the line. Okay, so now I've got my hole cut just before we start on the real deal here. Remember, keep in mind, you're cutting this edge of that black line off, leaving half and half on each. That way, when these slide back together, they're exactly the same frame distance as they are right now. Same thing on the other side. Well, we reached the no turning back point a long time ago, but we're at the point. What I did was, after I cut off the second part of the frame, I ended up spending some time going back over my lines and rechecking. Right now it's kind of just loosely fit on there, but what you want to do is work this all together, with the focus being that cut and the top cut and bottom cut, and these vertical cuts being the ones that more dictate how forward and back it ends up being. You want those to be real tight. The middle is obviously important to keep level, but it's more important to keep that top and bottom cut the same. That way you've moved it exactly 16 inches forward. What I've done is just kind of roughed it in. The only problem with trying to truss the body for this part of the stage is that most of these cabs settle in the back on one side or the other more than one side more than the other, and that doesn't help. But what I did was I came in here ahead of time and leveled out a piece of the door. It's just some simple shims there. That way at least I had some reference whether the truck shifted forward or back or not, and luckily it did not. So now all I gotta worry about is re-leveling, just like we did in the beginning. Got some smaller levels on here, and you can see we're getting close. I think I started it a week ago with a Monday cut, and that's where I cut the front edge, or sorry, the back edge of the bed first time, and then the next day I did the second cut and the frame. Then the third day I ended up doing a half day. And when we say days, I'm saying after work I come home and put a little bit of work into it, where you can see it's like 6:45, 7 o'clock. We still got some light, and I usually get home about 6. So yeah, half a day on the making some markings that I still haven't cut on the front end of the bed, but using that as reference to make my second cut, which would be the third hard work day, as well as this was a whole Saturday getting the truck. Basically I had to clean the we'll call it half Saturday, because I had to clean the honestly, I haven't used too much so far. I think I'm only 3 used Harbor Freight 16ths, and there was some meat left on those, and one cut-off blade. It was still cutting good, but I mangled the shit out of it trying to cut through one of the frame rails. So where we're at now is, you can see I have some differentiating gaps here, pretty tight at the top edge, pretty close to touching across the center, and we have a little bit of a gap bosa right here at the back. What that's telling me is I can take a little bit off that front edge to move this frame rail forward. And what you want to do is be mindful of keeping these movements very equal. So almost the same story on this side, gap at the back, little tight on that bottom corner. So what I'm going to do is also take a little bit off this front edge and probably that corner. That allows me to cinch this frame rail up tighter. Looks like I'm good across the middle. A little bit of a gap. And then what I'll do is do one last check with measuring from the front edge of this hole to that hole, and do a cross measurement, and then make sure the frame stays square, besides the fact that you're going to be squaring it up with C-clamps and stuff by the time we go to tack weld this together. So it's all kind of a slow, tedious process, but the more time you take here, straighter off the truck's going to be, happier you'll feel, and go to sleep at night. So okay, now that we've got the frame separated back apart, went back and corrected the extra gap that I had on the bottom edge by cinching up some of the tight stuff. Now that I think I'm pretty confident with this square edge, I'm going to go ahead and start beveling this for a proper weld, which equals about 45. You take about 2/3 of the material back, so that way your first arc lands on that 1/3, melts out, and ideally you'll have no major drop through, and you can run your puddles across those two bevels and work your way around. But that's what I'm going to start doing, is go back and bevel all these edges so I get a nice strong structural weld.